The fluorescent lights buzzed quietly in the Eastern Massachusetts Foster Care Center as Sarah and Michael Davidson walked through the long hallway. Their footsteps echoed against the pale blue walls, mixing with the sound of children playing in distant rooms. It was their third visit to the center this month, but today felt different. Miss Thompson, the social worker, led them with a concerned look on her face. "I need to be honest with you both," she said, stopping before they reached the playroom. "Amara is a special case. She hasn't spoken a word since she entered the system 2 years ago." Sarah squeezed her husband's hand. At 35, after trying to conceive for 7 years, they had finally decided to open their hearts to adoption. Michael, a high school music teacher, and Sarah, a pediatric nurse, knew they had love to give. "Can you tell us more about her?" Michael asked, his voice soft and measured. Miss Thompson checked her files. "Amara is 8 years old. She was found during a police raid in a bad situation. The details are sealed, but what we know is she's been through trauma. 3 foster families have already given up because they couldn't handle her silence." Sarah felt her heart ache. As a nurse, she had seen children who had withdrawn into themselves, using silence as a shield against a world that had hurt them too deeply. The playroom was bright and colorful, with sunlight streaming through large windows. Several children were playing with toys or reading books, but in the corner, a small figure sat alone. Amara had her back to the wall, wearing a purple dress, her dark curls neatly braided. She was drawing intently on a piece of paper. Miss Thompson approached her first. "Amara, sweetheart, there are some people who would like to meet you." The little girl looked up, and the Davidsons felt their breath catch. Her eyes were deep brown, almost black, and held a wisdom far beyond her years. She didn't smile or frown. She simply watched them with an intensity that made them feel like she could see right through them. Sarah knelt down slowly, keeping some distance to not overwhelm the child. "Hello, Amara. I'm Sarah, and this is Michael. Would it be okay if we sat with you for a while?" Amara studied them for a long moment before giving a small nod. It was the most response she had shown to any potential adoptive parents, according to Ms. Thompson's surprised expression. Michael noticed the drawing on her paper. It was a detailed sketch of a bird in flight. "That's beautiful," he said gently. "You're quite the artist." The girl's eyes flickered to him briefly before returning to her drawing. She picked up a blue crayon and continued working, but her body language suggested she was aware of their every move. They spent the next hour just being present with her. Sarah took out some crayons and started drawing too, while Michael hummed quietly, noticing how Amara's shoulders relaxed slightly at the sound of music. When it was time to leave, Sarah left her drawing, a simple flower, next to Amara's. "We would love to come back and draw with you again," she said softly. "Would that be okay?" For the first time, Amara looked directly at Sarah. She blinked once, then reached out and touched the flower drawing with one finger. It wasn't much, but to everyone in the room, it felt like a breakthrough. In the parking lot, Miss Thompson stopped them. I've never seen her respond like that to anyone. She usually just ignores visitors completely. But I need you both to understand, taking in a traumatized child who doesn't speak, it won't be easy. Michael and Sarah looked at each other. They had discussed this extensively over the past weeks, preparing for various challenges. "We know," Sarah said firmly, "but there's something about her." "We felt it too," Michael added. "She's not just silent, she's observing, processing. She needs time, patience, and love. We can give her that." 2 weeks later, after multiple visits and extensive paperwork, the Davidsons were approved to foster Amara with the intent to adopt. When they came to pick her up, she was waiting with a small backpack containing everything she owned in the world, some clothes, a worn teddy bear, and her drawing supplies. As they walked to the car, Amara took Sarah's hand, the first time she had initiated physical contact. In that moment, despite all the challenges ahead, the Davidsons knew in their hearts that their family was finally complete. They didn't need words to feel it. The first month with Amara tested the Davidsons in ways they never expected. Their suburban Boston home, once quiet and orderly, now held a different kind of silence, one filled with unspoken words and careful observations. Sarah spent hours setting up Amara's new bedroom. They had painted it a soft yellow, with white curtains that danced in the breeze. A desk for drawing sat near the window, and twinkling fairy lights hung above the bed. But on that first night, they found Amara curled up in the corner of the closet, clutching her teddy bear. "It's okay, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, her heart breaking. "You can sleep wherever you feel safe." She brought Amara a pillow and her favorite purple blanket, leaving the closet door open just enough to let in a gentle stream of light from the hallway. Michael observed that Amara had specific triggers. The sound of doors slamming made her jump. When he raised his hand to reach for something in a high cabinet, she would flinch and step back. Even the simple act of him walking into a room too quickly could send her hiding behind furniture. "We need to be more careful," he told Sarah one evening after Amara had gone to bed. "Everything we do sends a message." They developed a system. Michael started announcing his presence before entering rooms. Sarah created picture cards so Amara could point to what she needed: food, bathroom, feeling sick, or wanting to draw. Slowly, very slowly, they began to see small changes. One morning, Sarah found all the dishes from the dishwasher neatly arranged in the cabinets. Though only 8, Amara had memorized exactly where everything went. She would wake up early and do small chores, as if trying to earn her keep. It took weeks of gentle assurance to convince her that she didn't need to work for their love. The breakthrough with food came unexpectedly. Sarah was making pancakes one Saturday morning when she felt a small presence beside her. Amara stood watching, her eyes fixed on the mixing bowl. Without words, Sarah pulled up a stepping stool and handed her the wooden spoon. From that day on, cooking together became their morning ritual. School presented its own challenges. The Davidsons enrolled Amara in a small private school known for handling special cases. Mrs. Rodriguez, her teacher, used a tablet that allowed Amara to type her answers instead of speaking them. To everyone's surprise, she excelled in her studies, particularly in art and mathematics. "She's incredibly bright," Mrs. Rodriguez told them during a parent-teacher meeting. "She understands everything. She just chooses not to speak." But nighttime remained the hardest. Amara's dreams were filled with shadows that made her wake up screaming silently, her mouth open, but no sound coming out. Sarah would sit with her, not touching unless invited, humming soft lullabies until the fear passed. One night, during a particularly bad thunderstorm, they found her hiding under the dining room table. Instead of trying to coax her out, Michael and Sarah grabbed some pillows and joined her. They made a fort with blankets and spent the evening drawing pictures by flashlight. It was the first time they saw something close to a smile on her face. Amara's drawings began to tell stories. At first, they were just birds, always in flight, always escaping. Then she started drawing her new home, her new family. Sarah noticed how the figures in the drawings slowly moved closer together as the weeks passed. The social worker visited regularly, amazed by the subtle progress. "She's responding to your consistency," she told them. "Keep doing what you're doing." By the end of the first month, Amara had developed her own way of communicating. 2 taps on the table meant yes, 1 tap meant no, a drawn heart meant thank you. When she was scared, she would find Sarah and touch her elbow, their secret signal for needing comfort. At bedtime, she finally allowed them to move a real bed into her room, though she kept the closet as her safe space. Sarah would read stories while Amara listened, her eyes following every word on the page. Michael would play soft guitar music from the hallway, noticing how she would relax at certain melodies. They were building trust, brick by brick, silence by silence. The Davidsons learned that love didn't need words to grow. Sometimes, in the quiet moments between the challenges, they would catch Amara watching them with those wise eyes of hers, and they could swear they saw hope beginning to bloom. 3 months into Amara's life with the Davidsons, a chance discovery changed everything. It happened on a rainy Saturday afternoon when Sarah was cleaning the living room. As she moved the furniture to vacuum, she heard something she hadn't heard before: the soft sound of piano keys being pressed. Following the gentle notes, Sarah found Amara sitting at Michael's old piano in the study. The girl's fingers moved carefully over the keys, playing a simple pattern she must have learned from watching Michael during his practice sessions. Her face held an expression of pure concentration, something they rarely saw. Sarah stood quietly in the doorway, afraid to break the spell. For the first time, Amara seemed completely lost in something, her usual watchfulness temporarily forgotten. When the girl hit a wrong note, she didn't flinch or stop as she usually did when making mistakes. She simply tried again. Michael came home from grocery shopping to find his wife in tears at the doorway. When he saw Amara at the piano, he carefully set down his bags and pulled out his phone to record the moment. They had never seen her so peaceful, so engaged with anything before. That evening, after dinner, Michael sat at the piano. "Would you like to learn?" he asked Amara, adding the space next to him on the bench. To their surprise, she climbed up without hesitation. He started with simple exercises, showing her where to place her small fingers on the keys. Amara watched intently, copying his movements with perfect precision. When he played a note, she would play it back. Soon they had a conversation of sorts, not with words, but with music. The piano became their bridge. Every evening after homework, Michael would spend time teaching her. They started with basic scales, then simple melodies. Amara proved to be a natural, remembering complex patterns after seeing them just once. Her fingers danced across the keys with growing confidence. Sarah noticed other changes too. Amara started sleeping in her bed more often instead of the closet. During thunderstorms, instead of hiding, she would go to the piano and play softly, drowning out the thunder with music. Her drawings began to include musical notes floating around the birds she loved to sketch. At school, Mrs. Rodriguez reported that Amara had started participating in music class. While other children sang, she would play the classroom keyboard, her fingers moving with growing skill. The music teacher, Mr. Chen, was amazed by her natural talent. "She has perfect pitch," he told the Davidsons during a school meeting. "She can recognize any note just by hearing it. That's extremely rare, especially in children her age." One afternoon, Sarah came home early from work to find Amara playing a melody she didn't recognize. It wasn't one of Michael's teaching pieces, it was something original, something the girl had created herself. The tune was simple but haunting, filled with emotion that Amara couldn't express in words. That night, Sarah shared her discovery with Michael. "She's composing her own music," she whispered after Amara had gone to bed. "She's finding her voice through the piano." They decided to encourage this new form of expression. Michael bought sheet music paper, showing Amara how to write down her compositions. Though she still didn't speak, she would point to different notes on the page, telling stories through melody instead of words. The social worker was impressed during her monthly visit. "Music therapy is actually very effective for trauma survivors," she explained. "It helps process emotions that are too difficult to put into words." By the end of the third month, Amara had filled a notebook with her own musical compositions. Each piece seemed to tell a different part of her story. Some were dark and heavy, others light and hopeful. She played them in different orders, like chapters in a book she was writing with notes instead of words. The biggest change came during family movie night. They were watching The Lion King, and when "Can You Feel the Love Tonight" started playing, Amara got up and went to the piano. Without any sheet music, she began playing along with the movie, matching the melody perfectly. Sarah and Michael watched in amazement as their silent daughter swayed with the music, her eyes closed, completely absorbed in the moment. For the first time since she had come to live with them, she looked truly happy. That night, as Sarah tucked her into bed, Amara did something new. She reached for Sarah's hand and placed it over her heart, then pointed to the piano downstairs. The message was clear. Music had become her heartbeat, her way of speaking to the world. The Davidsons were learning that sometimes the loudest voices don't make a sound at all. The breaking point came during a violent summer thunderstorm. Dark clouds had been gathering all day, and by evening, lightning split the sky while thunder shook the windows of the Davidson home. Sarah was preparing dinner when she heard it. A crash from upstairs followed by the sound of breaking glass. Running up the stairs, her heart pounding, she found Amara's room in chaos. The girl had accidentally knocked over her bedside lamp while rushing to her usual hiding spot during storms. But this time was different. Instead of finding Amara in her closet, Sarah discovered her trapped in what appeared to be a full panic attack. The child was curled up in the corner of her room, her body shaking violently, tears streaming down her face as she gasped for air. "Michael," Sarah called out, her nurse training kicking in. "Bring me a paper bag and some water." As Sarah approached Amara, she noticed the girl was clutching her arm, which had a small cut from the broken lamp. But what caught Sarah's attention wasn't the fresh cut. It was the pattern of old scars she could now see on Amara's exposed skin. Michael arrived with the supplies, but stopped short when he saw the scene. Sarah was trying to calm Amara, speaking in soft, steady tones. Breathe with me, sweetheart. In and out. Like the waves at the beach we visited, remember? Thunder crashed again, and Amara pressed herself further into the corner. Her panic was different this time, more intense, more primal. Sarah noticed she kept looking at the window every time lightning flashed, as if expecting something, or someone, to appear. Making a quick decision, Sarah sat on the floor near Amara, not too close, and started humming the tune the girl had composed weeks earlier. Michael recognized it and quietly left the room, returning moments later with his guitar. He sat down and began playing softly, accompanying Sarah's humming. Slowly, very slowly, Amara's breathing began to steady. Her eyes remained fixed on the window, but her body started swaying slightly to the familiar melody. It took nearly an hour, but eventually she allowed Sarah to clean and bandage her cut. As Sarah tended to her arm, she couldn't ignore what she was seeing. There were marks on Amara's skin, old injuries that told a story of past abuse. Some looked like cigarette burns, others like rope marks. Sarah felt sick to her stomach, but kept her face calm and gentle. That night, after Amara had finally fallen asleep in Sarah's arms, the Davidsons had a serious discussion in their kitchen. We need to have her properly examined, Sarah whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. Those marks, there's so much more to her story than we knew. Michael ran his hands through his hair, fighting back tears. No wonder she doesn't speak. No wonder she flinches when I move too quickly. Someone hurt her, Sarah. They hurt her badly. The next morning, they called Ms. Thompson, their social worker. Within hours, they had an appointment with Dr. Martinez, a pediatrician specializing in trauma cases. The doctor's examination confirmed their worst fears. These injuries are extensive and systematic, Dr. Martinez explained during a private consultation. Some are at least 2 years old, others more recent. There are healing fractures that were never properly treated. The doctor showed them X-rays that revealed a story of prolonged abuse. The official records from before she entered the system are incomplete, she said. Someone went to great lengths to hide what was happening to her. Back home, Sarah and Michael watched Amara sitting at her piano, playing a particularly melancholic piece she had written. They now understood why certain sounds triggered her, why she checked the locks on her bedroom window every night, why she hid food under her bed. We need to get her into specialized therapy, Sarah said softly. But how do we help someone work through trauma when they won't speak about it? As if in answer to Sarah's question, Amara hit a series of dark, discordant notes on the piano. The sound echoed through the house, angry, hurt, and somehow more honest than silence. That evening, as Michael tucked her in, Amara did something new. She handed him her beloved teddy bear, the only possession she'd brought from her past life. Then she pointed to the locked window, hugged the bear one last time, and gave it to him. It was a small gesture, but its meaning was clear. She was finally ready to let go of her past and trust them with her pain. The Davidsons held each other that night, crying for the horrors their daughter had endured, but also feeling a glimmer of hope. The storm had brought darkness, but it had also brought truth. 6 months into Amara's life with the Davidsons, the moment they had been waiting for arrived in an unexpected way. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, and Sarah was sitting at the piano with Amara, teaching her a new piece called Moonlight Sonata. The house was peaceful, with sunlight streaming through the windows and the gentle sound of Michael gardening outside. They had just finished their weekly therapy session with Dr. Lewis the day before, where Amara had started using art therapy to express her feelings. As they played the piano together, Sarah noticed something different about Amara's demeanor. The girl's shoulders were tense, and her fingers kept stumbling over keys she usually played perfectly. Every few minutes, she would glance at the family photo on top of the piano, a recent picture of the three of them at the beach. Sarah was about to suggest they take a break when it happened. Amara suddenly stopped playing, her small hands frozen over the keys. Then, in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, she spoke her first words in over 2 years. He hurt them too. The words hung in the air like smoke. Sarah's hands began to shake, but she forced herself to remain calm. For several seconds, she said nothing, afraid that any reaction might cause Amara to retreat back into her silence. "Who did he hurt, sweetheart?" Sarah finally asked, her voice gentle and steady despite her racing heart. Amara's fingers traced the keys without pressing them. The other children, she whispered. In the basement. Sarah fought back tears as she carefully reached for her phone, sending a quick text to Michael. Come inside now. Amara is speaking. Can you tell me more about the other children? Sarah asked softly. Amara's voice was barely audible, but her words were clear. 6 of them, all little like me. You said if we told anyone, you would find us. Her hands began to tremble, but Jenny never came back upstairs. Michael appeared in the doorway, his gardening gloves still on. When he heard Amara's voice, he froze, not daring to move closer. The bad man said he was our new daddy, Amara continued, her voice growing slightly stronger. He made us stay in the dark, but I counted the days with Jenny. We sang songs without sound so he wouldn't hear. Sarah gently placed her hand near Amara's on the piano, letting the girl decide whether to take it. You're so brave for telling us, Amara. He can't hurt you anymore. You're safe now. Amara looked at Sarah, then at Michael, her eyes filled with tears. Jenny wanted to be a pianist too, but after she tried to help me run away, her voice cracked. I promised her I would play for both of us. Michael slowly approached and knelt down at a safe distance. Is that why you were drawn to the piano when you came here? Amara nodded, then spoke again, each word seeming to lift a weight from her small shoulders. Jenny taught me to play on the floor, pretending we had a piano. She said music would save us someday. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the clock and the distant sound of birds outside. Then Amara did something that took both Sarah and Michael's breath away. She reached out and took both their hands. Can you help find Jenny? She asked, her voice stronger now, filled with a purpose that had been hidden behind 2 years of silence. And the others? I remember the house. I remember the street. I counted every turn in the police car that day. Sarah and Michael exchanged looks, understanding the weight of what was happening. Their daughter wasn't just breaking her silence. She was potentially the key to solving a much larger crime. Yes, sweetheart, Sarah said firmly, squeezing Amara's hand. We'll help you find them. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. Amara turned back to the piano and began to play. Not the Moonlight Sonata they had been practicing, but the haunting melody she had composed months ago. Now they understood what the song was about. It was a memorial, a promise, a call for justice. Jenny always said the truth has a voice, Amara whispered as she played. Today, I found mine. The next 48 hours moved at a dizzying pace. After Amara's revelation, the Davidsons immediately contacted Detective Lisa Chen, who specialized in crimes against children. Within hours, their living room transformed into a gentle interview space. Detective Chen sat on the floor with Amara, spreading out a map of the city. Unlike other officers, she wore casual clothes and spoke softly, helping Amara feel at ease. Sarah and Michael sat nearby, close enough to support their daughter but far enough to give her space. Can you show me the route, Amara? Detective Chen asked, holding out a red marker. Take your time. Amara's small finger traced along the streets. We turned right at the big tree with the broken branch, she said quietly, then left where the red house stands. 3 more turns. Her voice grew stronger as memories surfaced. The house was gray with black shutters. Number 1247. Detective Chen wrote everything down, her face professional but her eyes gentle. Can you tell me about the inside? Amara squeezed Sarah's hand before continuing. Basement had 2 parts. Front room had old toys and a small window, but the back room. She stopped, her breath catching. That's where he took Jenny. Sarah noticed Amara's hands starting to shake and quickly pulled out the small keyboard they now kept nearby. Playing helped Amara stay calm while talking about difficult things. As her fingers found the keys, she continued. 6 of us stayed there. Maria was the oldest, 12 maybe, then Tommy and Sam, the twins. Jenny was 8 like me. Little Rose was only 5. Amara played a soft, sad melody. And there was another girl. She came the day before I ran away. I never knew her name. Detective Chen showed Amara some pictures. Did any of these men visit the house? Amara's fingers stopped moving. She pointed to 3 photographs without hesitation. He was the bad daddy, she said, pointing to the first. These 2 brought new children sometimes. The investigation moved quickly after that. Police units surrounded the gray house with black shutters that same night. They found evidence confirming everything Amara had said. And worse, hidden cameras, secret rooms, records of children bought and sold. But they'd also found hope. In a locked filing cabinet, they discovered documents with names, dates, and locations. A network was beginning to unravel. The Davidsons kept Amara home from school the next week. She alternated between long periods of silence and moments of unstoppable talking, as if 2 years of words were finally breaking free. Jenny loved yellow butterflies, she told Sarah one morning while drawing. She promised we'd have a garden full of them someday. Later, to Michael, we used to tap messages on the pipes at night. 1 tap for I'm scared, 2 for it's okay, 3 for I love you. Detective Chen visited daily, each time with news. They found Maria in a foster home 2 states away. The twins, Tommy and Sam, had been adopted by a family in Canada. Rose was safe with her grandmother in Florida. The newest girl had been rescued during the initial police raid with Amara. But Jenny's fate remained unknown. We're not giving up, Detective Chen promised. Every piece of information helps, Amara. You're helping us save other children too. As news of the investigation spread, more victims came forward. The network was bigger than anyone had imagined, spanning several states. The Bad Daddy and his associates had been trafficking children for years. One evening, while Amara played piano, Sarah noticed she was crying. But these weren't tears of fear or sadness. They were different. I kept my promise to Jenny, Amara said, her fingers still moving across the keys. She said if we ever got out, we had to tell someone. Had to stop them, had to save the others. Michael, who had been listening, sat down beside her. You did more than keep your promise, sweetheart. You're a hero. Amara shook her head. Jenny was the hero. She told me to run that day, said she'd distract him. Said I had to be brave and not look back. Her voice grew stronger. I'm not hiding anymore. Jenny wouldn't want me to hide. That night, Amara slept in her bed for the first time without checking the locks. On her bedside table, she placed a drawing, 6 butterflies flying free, the yellow one leading the way. 3 weeks after Amara's first words, justice began moving swiftly. The courthouse was large and intimidating, but Amara walked in holding both Sarah and Michael's hands, her head held high. Detective Chen had prepared her well for this day. The main courtroom had been modified for the special hearing. A large screen was set up so Amara wouldn't have to face the accused directly. Dr. Lewis, her therapist, sat nearby, and a comfort dog named Max lay at Amara's feet as she took her place at the witness stand. Remember, Detective Chen had told her that morning, you can take breaks whenever you need. You can play your keyboard. You're in control today. The prosecutor, Ms. Martinez, approached gently. She had spent days working with Amara, practicing questions, making sure the young girl felt comfortable. They had even visited the empty courtroom twice, so it wouldn't feel so scary. Can you tell us about the day you arrived at the Gray House? Ms. Martinez asked. Amara's fingers found the small keyboard in her lap. Playing softly, she began to speak. It was raining. The man, he said he was our new daddy, brought me and 2 other girls. One was Jenny. The courthouse fell silent except for the soft notes from Amara's keyboard. She described everything. The basement rooms, the hidden cameras, the times children disappeared and new ones arrived. Her perfect memory provided dates, descriptions, and details that matched the evidence exactly. Jenny became my best friend, Amara continued, her voice growing stronger. She taught me to be brave, said we had to remember everything so we could tell someone someday. She counted days by making marks on the wall behind a loose brick. The evidence was overwhelming. Police had found the marks exactly where Amara described them. They found the loose brick with Jenny's full name scratched inside. Jennifer Marie Santos, age 8. As Amara testified, other survivors watched from a separate room. Maria, now 14, cried as she heard her story being told. The twins, Tommy and Sam, held hands tightly. Little Rose, safe with her grandmother, drew pictures of the butterflies Amara had mentioned. The breakthrough came during the second day of testimony. Amara was describing the day Jenny helped her escape when a woman burst into the courtroom. She was crying and holding a folder of papers. Your Honor, the woman's lawyer announced, my client has information about Jennifer Santos. The court took a recess. Detective Chen rushed to talk with the woman, who turned out to be the wife of one of the accused men. She had been gathering courage to come forward, and Amara's testimony had finally convinced her. "Jenny is alive," Detective Chen told the Davidsons and Amara an hour later. "She's in a hospital in Michigan. She's been in a coma since the day you escaped, but she's stable. Her real parents are with her." Amara's hands froze over her keyboard. "Jenny's alive," she whispered. Then, for the first time since coming to live with the Davidsons, she burst into loud, uncontrollable sobs. Sarah held her as she cried, these tears different from any before. They were tears of relief, of hope. The trial continued for 2 more days. The evidence provided by the wife, combined with Amara's testimony, and the documents found in the Grey House, was unshakable. One by one, the accused were found guilty. The Bad Daddy and his main accomplices received multiple life sentences. After the verdict, Detective Chen knelt before Amara. "Because of your courage, we've found 37 more children. They're all going to be safe now, and we've stopped these bad people from hurting anyone else." The other survivors came to meet Amara. Maria hugged her tightly. The twins showed her magic tricks they'd learned. Rose gave her a drawing of butterflies. They were all healing, all finding their voices in different ways. That evening, as the Davidsons drove home, Amara made an announcement from the back seat. "I want to visit Jenny," she said firmly. "I want to play piano for her. Maybe it will help her wake up." Sarah and Michael exchanged glances in the rearview mirror. Their daughter, who had been silent for so long, was now planning a future full of hope and music. "Of course, sweetheart," Sarah said, smiling through tears. "We'll all go together." As they drove home, Amara hummed a new melody, not sad like her earlier compositions, but full of light and possibility. Justice had been served, but more importantly, healing had begun. 2 months after the trial, the Davidsons walked through the quiet halls of Michigan Children's Hospital. Amara clutched her sheet music in one hand and Sarah's hand in the other. They had been planning this visit for weeks, working with doctors and therapists to ensure everyone was ready. Jenny's room was at the end of the hall, filled with sunlight and yellow butterflies that her parents had painted on the walls. Medical machines beeped steadily beside her bed, marking each heartbeat, each breath. Though still in a coma, Jenny looked peaceful, her dark hair spread across the pillow. Jenny's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Santos, were waiting for them. They had been talking with Amara over video calls, sharing stories about Jenny, building a bridge between their shared pain and hope. Mrs. Santos hugged Amara tightly while Mr. Santos wiped tears from his eyes. "The doctors say she can hear everything," Mrs. Santos explained, stroking her daughter's hand. "We talk to her, read stories, play music. Sometimes her fingers move, like she's trying to respond." The hospital had moved a small electronic piano into Jenny's room when they learned about Amara's visit. Taking a deep breath, Amara sat down at the keyboard and placed her fingers on the keys. The room fell silent, waiting. "Hi, Jenny," Amara said softly. "I kept our promise. The bad people can't hurt anyone anymore. And I learned to play real piano, just like we dreamed about." She began to play the song she had composed during her silent days, but it was different now. She had worked with Michael to add new parts, transforming the sad melody into something more hopeful. The music filled the room, wrapping around them all like a warm blanket. As she played, Amara talked, sharing everything that had happened since their separation. She told Jenny about Sarah and Michael, about her therapy sessions, about the trial, and about all the other children who had been saved. "Maria is learning to be a doctor now," she said between notes. "The twins are in a musical too. Rose started kindergarten. We're all healing, Jenny. We're all finding our way back to the light." Halfway through the song, something extraordinary happened. Jenny's fingers began to move, tapping against her blanket in rhythm with the music. Mrs. Santos gasped, grabbing her husband's arm. Dr. Parker, Jenny's neurologist, was called in. He watched the response with growing excitement. "This is significant," he explained. "She's showing purposeful movement in response to stimuli. It's exactly what we've been hoping for." Encouraged, Amara played the lullaby they used to hum together in the basement. As the familiar tune filled the air, tears rolled down Jenny's cheeks, the first emotional response she had shown since falling into the coma. "Keep playing," Dr. Parker urged. "This connection, this shared memory, it might be exactly what she needs." For the next hour, Amara played every song they had created together in the basement, every tune they had hummed to stay strong. She played their secret morning song, their counting song, their brave song. With each melody, Jenny's responses grew stronger. Then, as Amara began their special friendship song, Jenny's eyes fluttered. Everyone in the room held their breath. Slowly, like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon, Jenny's eyes opened. She looked confused at first, blinking in the sunlight. Then her gaze found Amara at the piano, and her lips curved into a tiny smile. "You play for both of us," Jenny whispered, her voice hoarse from lack of use. "Just like you promised." The room erupted in joyful tears. Doctors rushed in, amazed by the sudden awakening. Mrs. Santos couldn't stop kissing her daughter's face. Mr. Santos hugged everyone, including Michael and Sarah. Amara stayed at the piano, playing softly, giving Jenny time to adjust. Their eyes met across the room, speaking volumes without words. They had survived. They had kept their promises to each other. They were free. Dr. Parker called it a miracle. Music therapy can be powerful, he explained. But this connection between them, this shared experience and triumph, it created a bridge back to consciousness. That evening, before they left, Jenny reached for Amara's hand. "Will you come back and play more?" she asked softly. "Every week," Amara promised. "We have years of music to catch up on." As they drove back to their hotel, Amara was unusually quiet, but it was a different kind of silence. Peaceful, contented. She had helped her friend find her way back to the light, just as the Davidsons had helped her find her voice. "Jenny's butterfly finally came out of its cocoon," she said, watching the sunset. "Just like me."